So let's start. Here is video. So in the last lecture, that can you can you can you
Sir, I think you have logged in twice, so that's why there is an echo of your voice.
I see. So what do what to do now? I don't I don't see the problem anyway. Is it okay now?
Yes, sir, now it is okay.
It is okay. 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 So we were in the previous lecture, we were discussing about this second order differential operator of this form px d2 dx2 plus rx ddx plus q of x, where q, r and p, q, p, r and q, these are real and continuous functions of x in the closed interval ab. So x belongs to this closed interval where these functions are real and continuous. And what we did in the previous lecture was the following. We wrote down the Lagrange identity, and the procedure to get the Lagrange identity is to consider this expression. You put in this operator, and then you just calculate. You just take out total derivative terms and subtract the extra terms that you get out of from the total derivative, and then you can recast it in the form of a Lagrange identity. That is, you can write this as L hat dagger x v of x star u of x, and that is equal to dq u v star dx. So this is how you can form the Lagrange identity, and from the Lagrange identity, what we did in the previous lecture was to find out the form of the adjoint operator. So we obtained the form of the, when you recast it in this form, then you can just read off what is the form of the adjoint operator L hat dagger x, right? And that we had done in the previous class. What you can further do is you can also read off the form of the function q of x. So q of x also you can find it out. So, and q of x is basically this total derivative term. That also you can read it off from the Lagrange identity. And then we said that let this operator L hat x be a symmetric operator. So we said that this operator is obeys this condition. So it has this condition, and from this condition, what we obtained was the following. We found out that r of x must be equal to p prime of x. And this tells us, and you will also find, if you carefully note what is the form of the adjoint operator, then you will also find that there is a p prime term appearing and p double prime term appearing. And therefore, just as in the case of the operator L hat x, px, rx, qx has to be real and continuous in the closed interval AB. Similarly, P prime x and P double prime x and R prime x from the form of the adjoint operator, P prime, P double prime and R prime, they also must be real and continuous. Obviously, they are real functions, but they must be continuous in the closed interval AB. And another condition that I mentioned in the previous lecture was that Px can have zeros only at the endpoints, not in between, not in the open interval AB. So open interval, you denote it like this. This basically means if x belongs to this open interval, it basically means a less than x less than b. This is an open interval. Okay, and this is a closed interval. So from this condition of symmetricity of this operator L hat x, we obtain the condition that R of x must be equal to P prime of x. Okay, and from there you can now write down what L hat x should be. L hat x is equal to therefore P of x d2 dx2 plus R of x is P prime x d dx plus Q of x. Okay, because this operator is now symmetric, and therefore the function R of x should be equal to P prime of x. This you can write it down as d dx of Px ddx plus U of x. So this form of the operator L hat x, when it is a symmetric operator, you see that this is a total derivative kind of thing, ddx of Px ddx plus U of x. This form has a special name, and it is called the Sturm or Sturm-Liouville form. It's called the Sturm-Liouville form. And if you notice carefully, why is this form very important? First of all, this second order differential operator, it takes this form only when the operator is a symmetric operator. So then only you can cast it in this form, which is the Sturm-Liouville form. And why is this form important? The form is important because this form, if you carefully notice, you have learned already special functions in mathematical physics, right? In your undergraduate course, you must have encountered Legendre polynomials and other special functions and other orthogonal polynomials. And it turns out that if you just isolate the differential operators from those Legendre polynomials, these are all solutions of second order differential operators, Legendre polynomials, Hermite polynomials, and Laguerre polynomials, associated Laguerre polynomials, and so on. If you notice carefully, they are basically functions of the second order differential operators. So they are basically second order differential equations. And those second order differential operators, they can be actually cast in a Sturm-Liouville form. So this is the form in which you can cast those equations, those operators. And this form is therefore very special because this form plays a very important role in those special functions in mathematical physics that we encounter. Anyway, so this is the Sturm-Liouville form, and now let us look at so as I mentioned earlier that in case of differential operators, two things are important. What is the representation of the operator which acts on the functions that represent vectors in the Hilbert space? This is one thing, and also the boundary conditions that are imposed on the functions on which the operators act. That is also very important. So now let us look at the boundary conditions. So what are the boundary conditions? The boundary conditions you can explain and simple, you can just read it off from the Lagrange identity, and from there you can read the form of Q function of x. Okay? And we did the calculation in the previous class. If you do this calculation once again, or if you just look at your notebooks, then you will find that the form of this function Q is V star x V star x, P of x, U of x, U prime of x minus ddx of V star x px U of x, and then you have V star x Rx plus V star x R of x U of x. So this form of the function q, you can also get it from the Lagrange identity, and we have done the calculation in the previous lecture. You just figure it out from that calculation that this, or convince yourself that this is the form of q that we have obtained in the previous class. So now the boundary conditions comes from the fact that if you integrate this, then this gives us u, the function q and v star at the points a and b. And now you demand that this term is 0. If I demand that this term is 0, then that imposes the boundary conditions, right? If you remember correctly. So this will give you, this condition will give you the boundary condition. And this is basically, once you impose the boundary condition, this basically gives us the Green's identity from the Lagrange identity. So let us now look at this function q. So this is equal to v of x, v star of x, p of x, u prime of x, minus, let us expand this term, differentiate the terms here. This will give us v star prime function of x, p of x, plus v star of x, p prime of x, times u of x, plus v star x, r of x, u of x. Okay, so what we have done in this step is just differentiate this, so we get two terms from here. Now remember that for this operator is a symmetric operator, and therefore r function of x is equal to p prime function of x. Okay, so let us substitute r in place of r function of x. Let us substitute p prime. This is the condition that we get from the symmetricity of the operator. So now you can see that this term and this term, the second term in this bracket, because this gets multiplied by u prime of ux, and there is a minus sign, so this term and this term cancels, and therefore we get v star x, p of x, u prime of x, minus v star prime. Okay, so this is the form of the function q, and therefore what will be the boundary condition? So the boundary condition will be v star x, p of x, u prime x, minus v star prime p u of x. This full thing evaluated at the endpoints, x is equal to a and b should be equal to 0. So this is our boundary condition, and therefore you can see from this implies that v star at b, p at b, u prime at p, minus v star prime at b, pb, ub, that is equal to, this must be equal to v star a VA U prime A minus okay. So this must be equal to this. So this is equal to 0 gives us this condition. This is the boundary condition. Is it clear? Is this okay?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Good. So this is the most general boundary condition that you get from the from your analysis, and now you can do the following things. You can see that if I demand that so we have seen from the example that if you impose some boundary conditions, so this is the full boundary condition. Now if you say that I impose the boundary conditions on the functions u, what are the functions u? The functions u are those functions on which the operator L hat x acts. And what are the functions v? The functions v are those functions on which the operator L hat dagger acts. L hat dagger, the adjoint operator acts. Okay. So we have seen from the example that if you impose certain boundary conditions on u's, then that gives you certain boundary conditions on v's. And now you can see that if you say that UA is equal to UB is equal to 0, UA is equal to UB is equal to 0, then you will find that this would also imply that VA is equal to VB is equal to 0. So the boundary conditions that the functions use obey, the same boundary conditions would be obeyed by the functions v's on which the adjoint operator acts. Now this, if you impose this boundary condition, then you can see, so if VA is equal to VB is equal to 0, then it also means that V star is 0, right? And similarly for U star, that holds. Now, if you impose this boundary condition, if you have this thing, then you can see that this is trivially satisfied. This condition is satisfied. Therefore, this is a legitimate boundary condition, and this boundary condition is called the Dirichlet boundary condition. Dirichlet boundary condition. Okay. So this is boundary condition. This is a type of boundary condition that you can have. The second boundary condition is U prime A is equal to U prime B is equal to 0. If this holds, then then for V's also V prime A is equal to V prime B is equal to 0. Then this boundary condition is called the Neumann boundary condition. The same set holds for V's also. The third is UA is equal to UB, but they are not equal to 0. It is UA is equal to UB and U prime A is equal to U prime B. This U prime A basically means du dx evaluated at x is equal to A. So that is U prime A. So this is the third type of boundary condition. They are not 0, and same set will hold for V's also. This is called periodic boundary condition. This is periodic. This is Neumann. And then you can have a fourth kind of a boundary condition, which is alpha UA minus U prime B equals 0 is equal to beta UB minus U prime B. This is the fourth kind of boundary condition you can have, and similarly for V's, the same set for V's, and then also this condition will be satisfied, and this is called the mixed boundary condition. This is the mixed boundary condition. This is the most general form of boundary condition that you can have. It's called the mixed kind of boundary condition. Why mixed? Because you can see that this is a combination of the Dirichlet and the Neumann boundary condition. So this the name is mixed boundary condition. So these are the four kind of boundary conditions that you can have, which will satisfy this. And now, since the boundary condition satisfied by, so what is the domain? What is the domain of the operator L hat X? The domain of the operator L hat X is the set of functions used on which the operator L hat X acts, which satisfies this boundary condition. Now, if this is the domain of this, then the set of boundary conditions on which L hat dagger X acts, which are V's, they also have the same form of the boundary condition, and therefore the domain of D and D L hat dagger X are equal. They are equal, and therefore this gives you a self-adjoint operator. So you see that B L hat and D L hat dagger, because we already know that L hat dagger is equal to L hat. This we have demanded, and then we have developed our theory, because when we demanded that the operator is a symmetric operator, that gave us the condition that R function of X must be equal to P prime function of X, and therefore this is a symmetric operator. And now we have looked at the boundary conditions, and from the boundary conditions we see that the domain of the operator L hat is the same as the domain of the operator L hat dagger, and therefore it is a symmetric operator as well as their domains are same, and therefore this operator L hat X, which is ddx of Px ddx plus U of X, this is a self-adjoint operator or Hermitian operator. And now you can realize, now you can understand why these special functions are so important, because these special functions are solutions of second order differential operators, which are self-adjoint differential operators. Okay, that is why the study of special functions in mathematical physics are so important, because we are looking at solutions of some differential operators which are self-adjoint, and therefore these, since they are self-adjoint, we know from quantum mechanics that self-adjoint or Hermitian operators are very important in quantum mechanics, because their eigenvalues are real and dynamical variables, observables must be, this is a postulate of quantum mechanics, that dynamical variables or observables must be self-adjoint operators, and therefore you can realize the importance of operators in Sturm-Liouville form or self-adjoint operators. So the summary is that self-adjoint operators are those operators which are symmetric operators, as well as their domains are same. The domain of the operator as well as their adjoint operator, which is in this case is a symmetric. It is the adjoint is the same as the operator itself. Their domains must be the same. And then these two operators, then this operator is said to be a self-adjoint operator or Hermitian operator. And you know that Hermitian operators or self-adjoint operators have real eigenvalues. Okay. So this is the thing that I wanted to discuss with you. And before I move on further, I would just, if you have any questions, I would take some questions. If you have some questions in your mind, you can ask at this point.
Sir, for the mixed boundary condition, there should be alpha U A minus U prime A, no?
U prime, yes, I'm sorry. This is U prime A. Thank you very much. This will be U prime A, not B. Absolutely. This is beta UB minus U prime B. This is alpha UA minus U prime A. Please make this correction. Thank you very much. This is not B. It's A. Any more questions if you have? Is this clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Good. So let us proceed. If you do not have any questions at this point, then we can proceed further. And let us now look at some differential equations. involving these operators that we have discussed so far. Let us look at the following differential equation. Which is L hat x, y of x is equal to f of x. Let us look at this differential equation where this operator is a self-adjoint operator, is a second order self-adjoint operator, and therefore you know that you can bring it to the Sturm-Liouville form. You can bring it to this form. So if you expand it, you can write this as ddx of px ddx plus q of x. Remember that these p and q's are real functions of x, real and continuous in the closed interval ab, acting on y of x is equal to f of x. So this is basically a second order differential equation, and the operator is a self-adjoint operator. So it has been put in the Sturm-Liouville form, and this is not only a second order differential equation, it is also non-homogeneous. This function f of x is a known function of x. You know this function of x. And the question is, how do you solve this equation? So you must have seen in your undergraduate classes that you must have encountered these kind of differential equations. And one of the powerful techniques that you have, so here, okay, this particular differential equation is, if you just expand it, then you will see in a moment that you can write this as ddx of p of x dy dx plus q of x y of x. So I'm just writing this left hand side, and therefore this is nothing but p of x d2y dx2 plus p prime of x dy dx. So get these two terms plus q of x y of x, and that is equal to f of x. So this is your differential equation. Okay. In this case, so you can now divide this by p of x throughout. And remember, we said that p of x does not have any zero in the open interval. This is the open interval. The endpoints are not included. In this interval, p of x does not have any zero, but it can have zeros at the endpoints a and b. That possibility is there. So this is the differential equation, and you must have encountered in your undergraduate classes these kind of differential equations, but with the difference that you encountered second order differential equations, but with constant coefficients. The coefficients were constants. But now you see that these are basically functions of x. These coefficients are no longer constants, and that makes this differential equation more complicated. And these kind of differential equations have solutions. We have seen such differential equations in our undergraduate classes, and the examples are Legendre, the famous Legendre differential equation, Bessel differential equation, Hermite differential equation, and so on. Laguerre differential equation, associated Laguerre, and there are many more, plenty of more second order differential equations whose coefficients are not constants. Okay. So the question is that how do you solve such differential equations? One of the powerful techniques that we have learned in our undergraduate classes is the series solution method. We have learned series solution. I'm sure all of you are familiar with series solution, and there are certain conditions. If those conditions are obeyed, then you can have a series solution method. Otherwise, if those conditions are not obeyed, then the series solution will not make sense. There is another method that is, and mind you, we have also made this differential equation a non-homogeneous differential equation. It is not a homogeneous one. Homogeneous is this is equal to 0. This is a non-homogeneous one. Another powerful technique that you may have learned or may not have learned is the method of variation of parameters. This is also a very powerful technique to solve such kind of differential equations. So this is another method of variation of parameters. And there is yet another powerful method that you must have seen in electrodynamics, and that is called the Green's function approach. Are you familiar with Green's function? Have you seen Green's function in electrodynamics?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. So another technique to solve such kind of differential equations is to apply the Green's function technique and obtain the Green's function of the problem, and then the solution of the problem if you know the solution of the problem. Once you can get the Green's function. What we shall now do is look at the Green's function technique. Let us look at the Green's function technique. This particular, you must in electrodynamics, you have seen Green's function in the solution of the Laplace's Poisson's equation. Here you must have seen the Green's function technique. That is, the Poisson equation is basically Laplacian of phi is equal to minus rho, or you must have solved or Laplacian of phi is equal to rho by epsilon naught. You must have seen the solution of such a differential equation, but that differential equation is basically a three-dimensional differential equation. This Laplacian is basically del 2x plus del 2y plus del 2z, right? So that is a three-dimensional differential equation, and in solving the differential equation, you will get a Green's function. You can use the Green's function technique to solve the differential equation, and that Green's function is basically the Green's function in 3 dimensions. But here we shall look at Green's function in 1 dimension, because x you only have 1 dimension. So this is Green's functions in 1 dimension. And what is the Green's function? The Green's function is basically L hat x. This is true for any Green's function. The Green's function by definition, it is denoted by capital G, and it is by definition the following thing. It is also the same in case of Poisson's equation. Poisson's equation where grad square phi is equal to rho by epsilon naught. Now you can define a Green's function there, that is grad square acting on this Green's function g, that is equal to delta function, and you can calculate the form of the Green's function, and that Green's function will come out to be 1 by r. Okay, so grad square of 1 by r you must have evaluated in your vector analysis course. It gives you a delta function. So this Green's function in this case is a one-dimensional Green's function. By definition, is the following thing. The operator acting on the function gives you a delta function. This plus or minus sign is your choice, is your convention. You can put a minus sign, you may not put a minus sign. I have put a minus sign here. Okay, so this is by definition your Green's function. And then, so thing is that if you can find out the solution of this, if you can solve this differential equation, then the solution of this differential equation is known. You can find out the solution of this differential equation. I repeat once more, this function f of x is a known function of x. I will give you the functional form of that thing. So let us see what is the solution of the differential equation. The solution of this differential equation is nothing but f of xi d xi so the solution of this differential equation, where f of x is a known function of x in general is basically given by this thing, where L at x can be any differential operator for the time being, but we shall carry out our analysis when L at x is a second order differential operator in the Sturm-Liouville form. So y of x, the solution of this differential equation, so y of x is the unknown function, is basically this. It is the Green's function g times f of xi. F of xi is a known function of xi. D xi integrate over the closed interval. Why is this a solution? Let us check whether this is indeed a solution or not. Let us act both sides of this solution by the operator L at x. So this will be L at x acting on this integral, but L at x, it acts at x, at the point x, but this is an integral on xi, so you can put it inside the integral. So it will act only on the Green's function because L at x cannot act on f of xi, but g is a function of x as well as xi. Since it is a function of x, therefore L at x will act on g on this function g. But what is L at x acting on g? It is a delta function. So that is, so minus and minus sign, this will give you a plus. So this will be integral a to b delta x minus xi f of xi b of xi, and that is equal to f of x. So you perform this delta function integral, it is trivial, it's f of x. So you see that y of x is equal to that, the thing that I wrote down is indeed a solution of this differential equation. We have checked it, provided the function g is a Green's function. So the solution will be given in this form. And how to find out the solution? You find out the form of the Green's function, put it inside the integral, integrate, you will get the solution of the differential equation. Is this point clear? Are you okay with it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now our task is to find out the form of this function g. So let us write down this differential equation where L at x is a Sturm-Liouville operator. This is p of x ddx plus q of x acting on g x comma xi equal to minus delta x minus xi. Okay. So this is our differential equation for the Green's function. And therefore this implies that you have something like this, ddx of p of x dg dx plus q g x comma xi in function of x, that is equal to minus delta x minus xi. Okay, so this is the differential equation that is satisfied by the Green's function. So now what I will do is the following. I will integrate this full equation over dx from x is equal to xi minus epsilon to xi plus epsilon. Let us integrate this full thing with respect to x, from x is equal to this. So this point xi, the point xi is basically contained in the interval of integration from, so there is a width in which along which you are integrating, and the point xi falls inside that region. And similarly here, dx so it is something like this. This is your x, this is your xi minus epsilon, this is your xi plus epsilon, this point is xi, and this is your x along which you are integrating. So xi falls inside the interval. So I integrate both sides with respect to x. If you integrate, what you will find is the following. This is a delta function. So delta function, the point you are integrating and xi falls inside the interval. Therefore, this will give you 1. There is a minus sign in front, so you will get -1. Okay. So this gives us -1. The right hand side is -1. Here, this integral, after doing this integral, what we shall do is the following. We shall take limit epsilon going to 0. So this width that you have, the width is 2 epsilon, right? This width is 2 epsilon. We shall take this width to be smaller and smaller, and take it and take this width to approach 0. So I will take limit epsilon going to 0. So in that limit, what will happen if epsilon goes to 0? Then this integral is from xi to xi. Therefore, this integral is 0. The value of this integral is 0. And what is this one? This is a total derivative term. Total derivative, because it is in the Sturm Liouville form. Therefore, this will give us p of x dg x comma xi dx from xi minus epsilon to xi plus epsilon, that is equal to -1. And remember that we are taking limit epsilon going to 0. Only in that limit, the second term vanishes, this term vanishes. And now you can, from here, see this is a continuous function of x. Therefore, this is xi plus epsilon dg x comma xi dx evaluated at x is equal to xi plus epsilon minus p xi minus epsilon dg x comma xi dx that is equal to -1, and you have this limit epsilon going to 0. Okay, you have this limit. Now, if you take the limit, then p of x is a continuous function. So p of x, p of xi plus, just a minute. So this will be what? This will be p of xi. Okay. So if you take the epsilon going to 0 limit, since this is a continuous function, this will be p of xi. And similarly, this will be also equal to p of xi. Therefore, p of xi is common. You can take it on the other side, and this will give us limit epsilon tending to 0 dg x comma xi dx x is equal to xi plus epsilon minus dg x comma xi dx x is equal to xi minus epsilon minus 1 by psi. So you can see that the Green's function, that this function g is such that it is not continuous at the point x is equal to epsilon. It is discontinuous. So you approach when you take epsilon going to 0 limit, you approach the point xi for this term, the first term, you approach the point xi from the right hand side, and for this term, you approach the point xi from the left hand side. So you can see that the right hand limit minus the left hand, the value of this thing approached from the right hand side minus the value of this thing approached from the left hand side, they are not equal. They are basically equal to minus 1 by p xi. Therefore, the derivatives of the Green's function of this function g is not continuous at x is equal to xi. So we have derived one of the properties of this Green's function, that the derivative is not continuous. We need to find out something more, and from that condition we can actually calculate what the form of this function g is, and this we shall do in the next class. Are you okay with this? Is this clear to you?
Yes, sir.
Good. So please go through the things that we have discussed today, and we have only one more class left, and we shall finish it up on Friday. We shall try to finish it on Friday. Friday will be your last class, the last lecture. So thank you very much for today. So we shall meet on Friday at the same time.